Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here. And as many of you probably know at this point, the two doctors behind me are going super mega viral because many people in, I guess you would call it the alternative media or conservative media, are pointing to a press conference that they put out. I think it was on the 22nd or the 23rd, in which they basically called for the end of the lockdown. Now, I want to get some things straight up out of the gate. Number one, number one, these guys did an hour plus long press conference. I think it ended up being like close to hour 20. It was in two parts. I want to know how many of you guys out there sat through this and actually watched the entire thing. And I don't expect everybody to, okay? I absolutely don't. But that's kind of my thing. So I sat through and I watched this thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to watch right here is like the last 12 minutes of their press conference. Okay. And this is in the second part. And by the way, thank you for people who send me the raw stuff and not just someone's take on it or a 2-minute Twitter video, because I need context, right? We need context when we're talking about these things. And I agree with probably about 95% of what these guys said. I'll show you where maybe I challenge them, although in the very, very beginning of the video, one of their numbers wasn't making sense to me, but that's okay. Okay, so let's get some things clear. Okay, of all of my coverage from, you could go back into, I think, December, right? When I maybe in my first or second video just talking about the Chinese stuff, I've never called for a lockdown. I've never called for martial law. I never said anything like that was good. I never said I'm happy with the way we're handling this. I've always said the solution would be worse than the coronavirus. Now, I know there will be people who take issue with me still, saying that the disease or the virus isn't even real. I want to make it very clear that these guys believe it is real and actually comment on that in the video segment. This is going to be a pretty deep one because we're going to go through that whole 12 minutes and we're going to break down all of that. And that's the tail end. And by the way, I want to point this out. A lot of people are going to be shocked to know this, but at the very end, and I'm not sure if any media has really picked this up yet, the one doctor starts talking about how people are, taking pictures with their guns and there's no ammo in shops. I mean, these are issues, right? This is why I covered the military preparation via the National Guard for an uprising. The economic impacts of this are incredible. Now, by the numbers, these guys are arguing what? That the density of this throughout the country nowhere near signifies the reaction. And I agree. Now, they also say that they initially are for the lockdown. They're going to talk about that too. I don't know that I agree with that because, I don't know that community spread would be any less, unfortunately, especially with the antibody tests. We're going to get into those in a minute. We have something that by the numbers they're saying is as deadly as the flu, but they're also going to admit what? The same thing I've been saying, it's way more contagious. So again, if you have a 0.1 death rate on both the flu and this, but this is 3 times as contagious, 4 times as contagious, or maybe even 5 times, then it goes up to 3 to 4, 5 times the flu. All right? And my argument has been these people are actually dying. You can go, and me and Corbett are going to talk about this, especially in New York. Okay, we'll put this right here in the chat so anybody can see the New York numbers. This one represents about 17,000 more people that would normally die at a time period of 37 days recently. Now, let's talk about asymptomatic. We'll go outside of the state here because I think that's important for people to get to before we get to what the numbers of antibodies are saying. Almost 20 million people in New York, and they're estimating 2 million people already with the antibodies. That means 2 million people in New York have recovered from this. And you got to think to yourself, how many reported cases overall in New York? There's nowhere near 2 million reported cases, right? So another one I keep pointing to for the asymptomatic passengers before we get to the video, and again, we're going to play the whole thing, is that out of 397 homeless people, almost 400 homeless people in Boston, 146 came up positive, but none were showing any signs of sickness whatsoever. So again, you have these asymptomatic carriers. Let's go outside of Boston. Let's talk about prisons. You want to know why there was that prison riot in Kansas? Well, if you look at Ohio, that's almost 3 out of 4. 73% of the inmates tested positive. Now, 73% aren't going to die. A very few amount of those guys are probably going to die, and they're going to be the ones with comorbidities. But when we talk about the number one comorbidity, especially in New York City in the dense area, okay, you're talking about obesity. And don't get me wrong, you can be fat in prison in the beginning, and you can still, not be in shape, but it's hard to be morbidly obese in prison. You get what I'm saying? So now, in the city especially, okay, 21% in the city say they have the antibodies. And again, that 2 million is an estimation, as they have not tested everybody, okay? And again, you look at New York State's population, it's 19.45 million, all right? So if anybody wants the numbers by the data, I put in that Twitter feed, but here you go. You can go check them out yourself. Because as I've said before, there's no doubt that these people are indeed dying, and that New York City is a hotspot. And again, the doctors are going to say this, that New York is a hotspot. And they're going to talk about how people are this close to each other's face, and that doesn't represent the rest of the country. And I'm going to show you how that doesn't represent the rest of the country. Because I'm going to have to get out of the way. You see all this? You see this? All this. That's New York State, except for it's not New York State. Because that's not even where we're talking about that 21%. You see this little blue area around my shoulder? Before we go into New York City, I just want to show you. I've talked about my cousin, and this is what she got from Dutchess County and the commissioner, because now they're going to want her to donate plasma, right? Now she's talked to these people. Here's her paperwork. Anybody can check this. Everybody who says that I'm lying about this stuff, she just got this today, and she sent this stuff to me because they're going to want her to donate plasma in this plasma treatment. So New York is here, okay? Where are the vast majority of the cases? Okay? You ready? That little white area you can barely see that I keep circling around in the bottom. That's where all those cases are, guys. That's it. My whole body was blocking it. The vast, vast majority. And the rest is kind of like, the boroughs and Long Island in here. You can see. Central, Western, Eastern. It's all right here. All right? When we're talking about where my cousin is, she's in the Hudson Valley, so that's like right up and around here, sometimes a little bit down. You know what I'm saying? But right in this area. And I'm all the way up here. And when you get up here, it's gone. So what we're really talking about is that little dot having the vast majority of these cases. And then breakouts that are somewhat similar, but not really in, dense areas. Okay? So I just want to point that out. And I also want to point out again that the number one comorbidity is obesity, other than being old as well. You got to get that in there as well. So this is odd to me before we get into this. Why not have these nursing home patients at the Javits Center that we built, right? That's upsetting. And I also want to point out that one of the reasons, because these guys are going to talk about ventilators, that other treatments and ventilators have been used less, and now we're having, we still had, I think, almost 400 deaths today that they're reporting as COVID. And remember, everybody says they're just marking everybody down as COVID. That's not true. Let's look at this right now really quickly. So if you look at even the numbers here, there's still 5,000 probable deaths that they're not counting yet. And it's 10,746 confirmed deaths. Hospitalized is 37,995. Now let's think about that too. Because if they're saying that 21% had the antibodies, and that would be about 2 million New Yorkers, and the vast majority of them, we're talking about 1.9 would be in the city or Long Island, right? If they're saying this, okay, this really means that it's not that deadly. It's just very, it spreads much more than the flu in condensed areas. So let's get to it. Let's start playing these guys, because I think they have a lot of good things to say.
Unknown. The unknown always scares us. So, in my opinion, what are the risks? What are the benefits of social isolation? And we think that the risks of social isolation are too high.
So you guys own and run this facility, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. We have.
Now, let me stop. So this guy's going to set it up where he's going to be like, you guys are benefactors. I might even skip over the question because it's long-winded, and they're saying how, you guys just want to financially do this. They speak about in the first, hour plus of this, how many employees have been furloughed. That's true. That's true. Again, when you have a dot be in the hot zone, again, a dot, I want to show it again. You can't even see where the hot zone is here. Literally that white dot and the rest of the country is much different. There are outbreaks, but nothing like the city, right? He's right. They should be going back to allowing elective surgeries, and people are scared to come to the hospitals, and people are being furloughed and losing their jobs, and people are losing their immunity to other things by covering their face and washing things all the time. You tell me, also again, find me a video that I was like, make sure you wash your hands or use hand sanitizer. Never. But that's not, again, that doesn't take away from this thing being a very real bioweapon. I mean, that's how I feel about it. Let's continue on.
7, yes, all of them. Yep.
What would you say to critics who would say, well, they've got a stake in this game, they are pushing this data or their representation of this data because they don't want to lose money? What would you say to those folks who say, I'm going to believe, maybe someone else who, the wider world scientific community who says these two doctors, despite their, intelligence, they have an ulterior motive? What would you say to those people?
Talk to ER doctors who have no ulterior motive. They have the same viewpoint. There's a post today from a doctor from Wisconsin. I encourage you all to read it. I'll share his story with you. It is exactly what we're saying. And he eloquently displays, he's an ER doctor. He says, I'm walking into this war zone. Our ICUs are empty. I'm scared to go to my own place of work. There's no patients, but we have people in hazmat suits checking my temperature as I walk through the doors. He's like, something else is going on here. This is not about science, and it's not even about COVID. When they use the word safe, if you listen to the word safe, that's about controlling you. So when I talk to all my ER doctors who work in a hospital, no stake in the game, same opinion. That's how I'll answer your question. We all have the same opinion.
So then you say that hospitals are losing money right now, most of them. But at the same time, you said earlier that doctors are feeling pressure from hospital administrations to put COVID down as a reason of death, which would presumably instill more fear in people. Doesn't that go against that whole line of thought? Why would they do that if it was going to cause more fear and cause them to lose more money?
Exactly. There's something else going on, and that's a different discussion.
We don't know. I mean, we're just here to present the scientific
facts.
That's
a political discussion.
Yeah.
So you think some hospital administrators are undercutting their own bottom line?
We're presenting the medical data here. I mean, what I think about politics is irrelevant. We're presenting the medical data.
We need to stay on things that we can answer intelligently, which is not why does a CEO of some hospital in Wisconsin do that. We need to stay on the topic of, do we need to shelter in place, and does that make sense from the microbiology knowledge we've known for 30 years? The sciences haven't changed. We live our life in the life sciences, biology, biochemistry, microbiology. So everything that you're asking us goes against that sheet of information. Why people do things at a hospital is not really our area of expertise. So from what we've seen right now, it's time to open back up. The science says it is. The models we have been using from predictions to predict the amount of disease are not accurate. This information is accurate. It models the flu. Let's go back to work. That's what the data is saying. Not models. Data is saying that.
Would you say, though, that, like a situation in New York City, that's not like a flu? The hospitals there are completely overwhelmed and swamped, and people, working in the ERs are dying from this. So, that's not just a flu type situation, right?
Look at Italy in 2017. Hospital systems overwhelmed, people dying. Overwhelmed system from the flu. This happens from the flu. If you've been working in the ERs, I've seen multiple people, hallways full, people dying, news media there, stories going on from the flu. This does happen.
It does, okay. So
This
you're
does
saying
happen.
It's not just the flu. It's
No.
the flu. That's what I mean. That's exactly what I mean. People think it's just the flu. It's just coronavirus. What's the difference? You're used to the flu. You're used to saying it's just the flu. FLU, influenza, is something we've grown up with. You're used to it. You're used to it, right? If somebody commits suicide today, you're like, yeah, that person committed suicide. It's awful. Or if somebody dies today from the flu, they died from the flu. It's awful, terrible, but we're used to it. We're not used to coronavirus.
So let me stop you here. I let it go for a long time. I think these guys have said a lot of really good things, right? I would probably contend that although it does happen, like with Italy, it's never been across the globe like this. And again, if you look at the breakouts, where is it? It's the elderly, but you look at China and you look at New York City, what do they have in common? Wuhan, condensed living areas, people on top of one another everywhere. Again, I cannot reiterate this enough for people that want to just deny that, any of it is real, because they're about to tell you it's real, okay? That little dot over my head, where right next to where it says New York, not the state, that represents the majority of the deaths and cases, okay? It has to be said again and again and again, because a lot of people just do not get it.
Not used to something brings fear. Human beings don't like change.
I just, from the things that I've been reading, even, doctors working in the ERs in New York City, I haven't heard any one of them saying, oh, it's similar to a flu outbreak. They were pretty impacted by swine flu in New York City. Mm-hmm. But I haven't heard anybody really say, oh, it's just like swine flu was. Have you?
They're getting hit hard. They're a hot zone. And we don't ride subways with, 1,000 people in a small car that are this close. They had reasons for the disease. And coronavirus is shown to be very contagious. Let's be clear. It is contagious. We're not saying it's not. It may even be, from what I've read, more contagious and spread more rapid.
There it is. Okay, I think that's key right there. It needs to be said again and again and again. So again, if the death rate does model the flu, and it seems to, but again, it is more contagious. So if it's twice as contagious as the flu, it's going to be 2 times as deadly. 3 times as contagious as the flu, it's going to be 3 times as deadly. But the problem is, with the flu, there's nowhere near as many asymptomatic carriers. And for those that have a bad bout of the flu and do survive, they don't have cystic fibrosis like damage to their lungs, and now there's some study about the male testicles. All right? So that's real. And I just want to point out that these doctors are not saying that COVID-19 is not real and that the outbreak in New York is fake. Okay? I think that's very, very key. And there's a lot more to be said with these guys, because I'm on their page.
But the actual cause of death and the disease cycle is similar to what we're seeing from the flu, with more of a respiratory component. And they were screaming for ventilators. What percent of people die on ventilators?
All of them.
80, 90%? Once you're on a ventilator, if you understand, you're in a bad shape.
Let me stop you. Also, one of the first things that I reported, before any of the media was reported, go back and watch my videos, and then go watch the mainstream media. I was days ahead of that because I was talking to nurses on the ground. And again, thank God for people like this doctor, Cameron Kyle Siddell, who had his videos go viral. So they started doing more oxygen machines, BiPAP, CPAP. So less people are going on those, because he, again, like this guy's saying, it's like a death sentence. All right. And I encourage people to follow him, because he's still on the ground. And, he's gotten national and international media to follow him. Listen, they're right. Something is going on here. And I've talked about the eugenics aspect of this. Again, you have something that has so many asymptomatic carriers, as we went over in the very beginning of this video. Let's continue on.
And they're screaming for 30,000 ventilators that they didn't use, right? They're screaming for a lot of things. 30,000, they used 5. How many 100% over did they order?
Well, number one, let me say this. I'm glad Cuomo, quote unquote, over prepared there. But at the same time, if someone like Siddell doesn't go viral in the first week, right, and get the information out to other doctors, would we use double the ventilators, triple the ventilators to try to treat this? You know, again, I do think there's a motive of the predator class here. You know they think we're useless eaters. You know they like to treat your other ailments with big pharma commercials of bullshit. So why would they want to treat this humanely? When have they ever treated human beings humanely?
How many hundreds of millions of dollars? Entire companies, GM, were forced to switch their production lines. For what? I'm saying the secondary causes of what we're seeing, oil shutdown. We have predictable negatives from lockdown. Predictable negatives. Corona has unpredictable negatives.
No, I see what you're saying. I mean, it sounds like you're saying, we actually have some data to look at now, and in the beginning, we didn't really know, but now we can draw some conclusions.
And those conclusions that you guys were able to draw, really the entire nation, do you think, respectively, the numbers are low in those ratios that you're mentioning, the fatality versus how many people have them, because we've been social distancing? Now, you don't think it's because, since we started doing these, that those models that our county health shows how effective social distancing is, that's all false?
But that's why we went over Sweden and Norway. We went over Sweden and Norway because you have lockdown, no lockdown. Sweden, no lockdown. Norway, lockdown. That's 10 million, that's 15 million people. We have the data. That's what I just went over with you. Lockdown.
Norway and Sweden also have drastically different testing standards and metrics. Norway is basically testing everybody. Sweden, they're only testing you if you end up in a hospital.
No, that's not accurate. They're not testing everybody.
Well, of course, they're not testing all 5.5 million Norwegians, but their testing is much more widespread.
The bottom line is, from those of us who study it and have a background in this, is lockdown versus non-lockdown did not produce a statistically different number of deaths. That is the bottom line.
That we know of. Right, so people could be dying in their home or from other things, but if Sweden, if they're not being tested, then they don't know what the cause of death is.
Yeah, and if you were to give me a test on analyzing these numbers and trying to, I probably wouldn't perform so well. I guess what I'm trying to cross-reference is I hear our president, I hear our governor say social distancing is working. And you guys are saying it's not needed. So I guess that's what I'm trying to wrap my head around. Like, why is that?
It was needed initially.
Are they lying? Are they lying?
It was needed initially. They actually, we both agree with exactly what they did initially.
See, this is where I'm a little, they cow down that say, well, we needed to initially lock down. I don't know. That's tough. Warnings, maybe, again, I don't know, man. I don't know that, lockdowns saved anything.
Because we didn't know, it was an unknown. Now it is becoming known. Initially, when you don't know something, you're extra careful because you're fearful. It's just like when you see a patient and they're very sick, you test for everything because you're scared. You're fearful. But then as you see more of those patients, you realize, hey, I know what to test for, right? It's shotgun effect versus sniper effect, right? So initially, when this data came out of a new virus that's lethal, they went all out, and I think that was appropriate. But now that we have the data, we're seeing that 97% of patients completely recover, and those 4 patients that die, they have over 90% comorbidities. Let's run through that one more time. Out of 100 people, if 96 do fine, the 4 that die, 90% of those 4 have comorbidities. Heart failure, emphysema, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus. They're on immunomodulating medications. They're immunodeficient, HIV. These are the people that are dying. You get some healthy people that die, but that's an infinitesimal number. Tiny.
So, and you think that differentiation of the conclusions that you doctors are drawing versus them is because they are academics or something along that line? What you're
well, I think we're in the weeds. We work with this every single day, and the numbers don't make sense to us. And they don't make sense to ER physicians and physicians all over the country. It's not just us.
And then my final question, just to make sure we get it right, I think you guys said this. Please keep your first, your last name, your spelling, please. Your first, your last name, your spelling, please. Thank you, sir.
Dan Erickson, that's DANERICKSON.
Perfect, thank you.
Artin, ARTIN,
Let me just stop it because here's where it does get a little political at the end, and he starts talking about the paychecks and the gun shops.
Awesome, thank you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your time.
ARTIN.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, guys, thank you so much.
Appreciate you guys.
And you guys are the co-owners of
Yeah.
Accelerated Urgent Care? Okay.
What we understand. It's not a you're right and you're wrong thing. It's the way we interpret data. We work in the field, and some people that are not working in the field and still getting a paycheck have a different opinion. If you weren't getting a paycheck, you might have a different opinion.
Yeah.
If you weren't getting a paycheck, if everybody in here is getting a paycheck, right? Cafe Rio is not. They've all been furloughed. When you don't get a paycheck, your opinions start switching.
Yeah.
If you were at home furloughed for the unforeseeable future, would you be excited about staying sheltering in place?
No, I mean, I completely understand that. And we're seeing this around the country now, I think, that people are demanding that they be allowed to go back to work and...
Well, it's also, at what point, who says what's safe? Are you smart enough to know what's safe for you? Or is the government going to tell you what's safe for you? Who tells you what's... As soon as they use the word safe, that means control. We know what's safe for you. You're too dumb to understand disease, you see. We know what's safe. And so they're going to use this model for different things. We got a bomb threat from China. Everybody stay in their home for 3 months. What? They are using this to see how much of their freedom can they take from you. And will you roll over and stay in your house? And it's working.
Guy, I gotta agree with most of these things he's saying. I mean, right? I mean, I've contested like one small item. Because, I mean, they are breaking down the numbers. But again, when you have something that is so contagious, right? And so much more contagious. And we'll see what the second wave looks like. But, killing it. Now, this is the other part that I don't think, that there's a lot in here that the regular media and the alternative media aren't going to tell you because they don't have the time or don't take the time to actually watch these full things. But I really thought, again, especially since most people just played like small bits from the first part of this thing, that people miss the bigger picture here.
And if you notice the way Americans are responding, if you go to any gun store in town, guess what they're out of? Ammo. None of them have ammo. I went to 3 of them. They said thousands of rounds have been bought. Why? People are mad. They're starting to post on my Facebook with their AKs going, let's roll. So what I'm saying is, let's avoid all that. Because if you stomp on our freedoms, that has one ending, and it's violence.
I mean, there it is. And you know what? We do it live here. So we did gain a ton of subscribers, and thank you so much for that, Gary Franchi. We gained a ton of subscribers. So I want people to understand why, these things matter to me. Because in February, they were having drills like this one, okay, that people need to watch, where it's not Bin Laden, it's not Arabs, it's American citizens that are getting patted down for weapons, that are in the backs of trucks, firing, that are being taken in by the military. This is something that is going on with our military during these very crazy times. These drills are real, okay? And I'm so glad that the military response to this has been, not this, dropping down into parking lots in urban areas, in suburban areas. This is pretty much nutty, right? And they're not showing you this on the news. This is localized news. This happened right before everything, okay? And people go, oh, Jason, you blew everything out of proportion that everybody was talking about. You told me where I said this thing was going to kill everybody or have a crazy fatality rate. And again, you can follow all my stuff for months. Now, the other thing is that this wasn't just there. Apache, we do it live. So just so everybody knows, they did this in Hollywood with the Apache Drills just around the same time. See, February 26th, there they are at Hollywood, literally the black helicopters. And then they also did it right outside of my hometown, Apache Cooperstown, New York. Let's see if we can get the cut. Apache helicopters. There we go. This was, yeah, all at Seago. It's right there. Bam. And they've done this for a couple years now. Okay, but this is it right there. And this was like a month later. And you can see them. There they go. Oh, the kids are in the copters. We love it. Huh? It's great stuff. Get in. Get used to the military coming on in. All right? So if people don't understand what my concern was there, I've always said, and you can go back to my Dan Dix interviews, my Corbett interviews, that no matter what, the solution was going to be worse than the actual problem. But the problem is also real. It is a real bioweapon they've hit us with, and those deaths in New York that are very concentrated are also real. And I think that everybody needs to acknowledge that these doctors also said that is real. I think it's important, okay? Because you can't, people have to be able to maintain that just because one thing's true doesn't mean another thing's false. And that ideas are not mutually exclusive all the time. I think that's a key thing for discernment. So guys, there it is. Thumbs this video up, subscribe, and share if you want to financially support me. If you actually like the truth, not convoluted left-right nonsense, right? Basically, somebody that's going to try to give you the straight dope, admit when he's wrong. The military did not lock New York City in. Thank God. Cuomo even pushed back on Rhode Island when they started doing door-to-door checks for New Yorkers. That was a good thing. Those were good things. So these doctors are killing it. Guys, I want to thank you so much. I've been reading this one here. And by the way, this goes for like $150 on eBay. I did not pay $150 for it. It's an old library book. Pretty awesome. But it's a 1974 piece on the Bohemian Grove. And so far, it's been pretty incredible. I ordered the original annal because we did get over that 150 mark that day. And if we get to 4,000, I can also get yet another annal. It's pricey, but it's worth it. And it looks, it's a newer one. The newer ones have some really good stuff. We're going to be updating that as well. Make sure you're subscribed if you're new to this. If you just tuned in, you like what you saw, you like somebody, again, that's not giving a liberal or conservative, a left or right perspective, but one that, again, encompasses all of us. Because, listen, we're all neighbors, we're all friends, we're all brothers, we're all sisters, right? We are. And it doesn't matter if you vote blue or red. That military is not going to ask you whether you're a Democrat or a Republican once it comes for you. And most people in that military are good, I get it. But when you get into a situation where they have fear, right? These doctors, they talked about fear. It can get pretty crazy. I got Steve from Slow News Day behind me on later on today at 4 p.m. I'm looking forward to that. And guys, I want to say Corbett's coming at 8 p.m. tomorrow night. Follow me on Twitter. Check me out on Rockfin exclusively. Oh, I didn't have it over here. Rockfin exclusively. Noon Tuesdays, just sign up for free. And you can follow me. If you are a premium subscriber, you get all the premium stuff. But there's plenty of free stuff here as well. I'm also on Minds. Guys, thank you guys for joining me so much. I love you, and I'll see you on the flip.